Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 50 of the Herald's Horn. That's right, we made it all the way to episode 50. I didn't think I would when I started off this little thing, but here we are. On this one, Dan and I talk a little bit about Pro Tour Edge of Eternities at MagicCon Atlanta. Modern is such a fun constructed format, so we just had to, name a bunch of cards and a bunch of decks that we liked, as you do on a Magic the Gathering podcast. We also take a really high-level look at all 7 of the sets coming next year. Obviously, we have a lot of complimentary things to say about all of that. Also, Remastered and Masters sets are currently on hiatus, currently not going to be used by Wizards of the Coast for the foreseeable future. What do we think about that? All of that and more on this episode. But before we begin, I wanted to tell you really quickly about something else I'm doing, which is Stitcher's Supply. I historically have been pretty frustrated with the quality of merch that exists out there in the Magic the Gathering space, whether it be creators by necessity having to rely on something like Bonfire, which costs a lot of money, has pretty low returns, and also, leaves the fan with a low quality product. Or, there's just stuff out there that isn't all that inventive. If I see another mana symbol on something, I'm gonna have a problem. So, while I don't think I have all the solutions, I think I can try to make Magic merch better myself, and that is why I and my wife Jen started a company called Stitcher's Supply. I wanted to tell you about it today, and we'll continue telling about it today, but specifically wanted to tell you about it today because we have an awesome pre-order for a Ristic Studies t-shirt that is ending tomorrow at the time this is coming out. It is ending on Friday. If you're listening to this on Thursday, if you're listening to this on Friday, get them while you can. But we're always going to keep putting up other stuff on there. I also just put up a restock of our pretty popular Don't Want to Pay the One hat and have other cool stuff coming soon, including the very first playmat that we've made on the site. Check out StitchersSupply.com. You can also find the link in the description. Thank you so much. Hello, it's time for the Herald's Horn. My name is Cal Jones, and today I'm joined by Goblin Balls' biggest fan. It's Dan. Say hello, Dan.
Are you really going to use that for the... I hate that. Hello! It's me, Goblin Balls. I was going to say my real last name. Run the thing.
And welcome back. As always, we are going to jump directly into the news. First up, we have, I gotta say, a bit of sad news for me. Mark Rosewater confirmed over the last week on good old Blogatog, his Tumblr blog, where he answers questions from the likes of you and me. He confirmed that, at least for the time being, most reprint sets, which many of you would recognize as remastered sets, such as Ravnica Remastered, Innistrad Remastered, and obviously also the Masters sets, such as Modern Masters, Iconic Masters, Commander Masters, etc., Double Masters even, are all kind of on the back burner. The quote from Morrow: "We are choosing to retire Masters sets for now. That doesn't mean they can never return, but part of cutting back on the number of releases was finding things to trim." Obviously, a extremely full release calendar between premium sets, which are standard legal sets, master sets, or other reprint sets, or booster innovation sets, which have always kind of been my favorite. Like Double Masters was originally a booster innovation product. Battle Bond, Conspiracy for the old kids out there, because Conspiracy is like over a decade old now.
Oh, easily, yeah.
Conspiracy 2 ain't that far off being a decade old.
I was going to say, I think I opened
Battle
up Conspiracy 2 in college, which is more than 10 years ago.
Yes, exactly. All of these products have been, it seems, kind of unceremoniously shoved out of the way to make more room for more standard sets. Wizards has allegedly taken the feedback that there have been too many releases. Granted, there's still a lot of sets coming out in 2026. We'll talk about that later in the show, as we always do. But it seems that remastered, mastered sets, that kind of stuff, at least for the time being, is not going to be on the schedule as we get more and more standard legal sets instead. Dan, I have the feeling that you could have been like a Modern Masters 2016 guy, like real big. Is that true?
I want to say it was 15 was the first one was. Oh, no, I can't remember. I do remember.
The one with Snapcaster Mage on it.
Yeah. That came out, I want to say, like, kind of right before I really started getting into like drafting and the deeper mechanics of Magic. So that one kind of missed me, but like coming back to it, like it was still like not in print for that whole time, but it was pretty easy to find over the next like 3 or 4 years. So I remember buying lots of packs of it because it was loaded with really great cards, like all the way down the rarity slots down to the commons, a bunch of really great commons in that set. So it was really well put together. I like that set a lot. The further iterations of Modern Masters, I'm not as big a fan of.
Sure. And it kind of feels like, especially the Master sets were, at least Modern Masters were already replaced by like Modern Horizons instead. Like, why do reprint sets if you can do new Modern level cards with maybe some reprints in there? And it does feel like, at least at this point, they have getting all of the quote unquote like needed reprints or the high EV reprints. It feels like these days they've gotten really good at sneaking those out into the ecosystem without needing a full, massive whole set like Modern Masters, Iconic Masters, which has a lot of, those $40 rares and mythics in there that they're trying to get more supply of out there. It feels like now a lot of that stuff will occupy special guest slots. They slip that stuff into Commander precons. Obviously, sometimes you see that kind of stuff in a secret lair. And it feels like that's a lot more of the reprint home. Are there... I am kind of always amazed these days that it doesn't really feel like there are any like cards that people are begging to be reprinted as much anymore. Like even it used to be like the fetch lands where it was like, oh man, I can't wait for the next Modern Master set to come or whatever, because it's time for the Zendikar fetches to be reprinted. And oh, there they are. And they'll go down from $40 to $20. The fetch lands are sneakily not expensive anymore. The shocks are not expensive anymore. A lot of random, if you look at a random Modern deck anymore, I would say maybe like the major standout, if you look at like this last Pro Tour, which we're going to talk about next, of all of those major decks, Boros Energy will still run you a bunch of money because Ocelot Pride is a $30 card, Ragavan is a $30 card. But a lot of like the only like super, super expensive stuff anymore that is old enough to see a reprint in something like that is like Mox Opal. Obviously, Mox Opal is a 3-figure card. Like, some of the most expensive cards that we saw in this Modern Pro Tour were Quantum Riddler. That's a standard legal card that is one set old.
I mean, honestly, that's mostly where you see those cards that cost $40 to $50 now is coming from more recent sets. I mean, when the era that we're talking about, like original Modern Masters and that sort of era 10 to 15 years ago, we're thinking of like Mishra's Bauble used to be a $40+ uncommon because it was only printed in Cold Snap. Scalding Tarn was $100+ per card. Like, yeah, it's very different. I think that you're right. I think that the method that we see now of reprints through these alternative means of like the special guest sheets, the big score, all those sorts of supplementary things that go into standard booster sets, it seems like a very effective way of reprinting them, because you're right, we really don't see things that are like older that cost like I can't remember what the last like $40 uncommon
like
would have been.
There's still like $30 to $50 like rare staples.
Sure.
Force of Negation's $50. Scapeshift that sneakily hasn't been reprinted since M19. That's like $60 now for the Amulet Titan heads out there that play Scapeshift. But like Mox Opal is like the only hyper expensive card. And again,
it's a mythic. Like, yeah, we're talking about like a very big swath and like how many copies exist in terms of like Mox Opal versus a Mishra's Bauble.
Exactly. So I do got to say, at least from like my boomer perspective, I always liked these, especially because these always presented a really interesting draft format. A lot of the master sets were a lot of fun. Put together a lot of relatively iconic cards that a lot of people would recognize to make a cool draft environment, get some reprint equity out there. And the remastered sets I've been less enthused about. It's an interesting idea, kind of cool, kind of whatever. I enjoyed the Ravnica one, but largely because it had Shocklands in it, right?
Yeah. I think it really comes down to what kinds of reprints are in it. And I think, unfortunately, for the remastered sets, it tends to be more like Commander focused. Like, one of the big cards from Ravnica Remastered was just that Edgar was getting reprinted. And I mean, beyond that, like, I don't know. I think I know that, like, maybe Gravecrawler was in it, and, you know, a lot of other, like, pretty iconic cards from Ravnica. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a little bit less memorable, I think.
I think where maybe the absence of these will be felt the most for me is because in many ways in a release calendar, they did represent a kind of like cool off, chill out period where, like, for a lot of invested players, you'd pay attention to the, you know, release schedule. I mean, not the release, the pre-release season. Holy moly. Preview season. To be like, oh man, has Ancient Tomb been number crunched out yet? It hasn't. Let's keep paying attention. Oh no, Ancient Tomb. Okay, I don't actually care anymore. I'm not going to be able to buy Ancient Tomb for $30 less than it is today. And then, you know, you'd kind of have like, if you want a cool draft, go to your LGS. If not, it is a set you can safely ignore. Go back to playing your EDH games. Go back to playing your standard games. However, modern, whatever. Now your modern deck is cheaper. Yeah, you're right. That's the big change. A lot of, you know, the feedback that they've received about cutting back on number of releases has been greatly tied to the amount of mental capacity it takes to remain engaged with the game. How quickly it feels like sets are coming out. Can these expansions breathe in relation to each other? And if we're cutting these larger reprint sets where, also, if you're engaged in Magic, there's like no new information in there for you. Like, if you're an engaged Magic player and a master set comes along, you know many, if not all, of the cards in there already. There's nothing new for you to learn.
Which I think is pretty much the intended audience. Like, I think more definitely. So than, like, there's certainly, you know, newer people who want to come to and, I can get some cheaper copies of modern cards. Maybe I can get my toes into it. But yeah, it is mostly the veteran players who are like, I really need cheaper copies of Scalding Tarn, cheaper copies of Tarmogoyf, etc.
All that to say, I'm going to miss these because rather than feeling like, in addition to the schedule, making Magic more busy, I feel like in many ways they were kind of like a breathing period for me where I could chill out, ignore whatever this 9 weeks release is, and focus a little bit back more on my current favorite Magic the Gathering set, Marvel's Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's the question I have to ask here is that, like, if we are peeling back some of the sets that we're putting out to make things a little bit simpler for Magic players, why are we taking back the one thing that people don't need to learn a new thing for? Like, it is certainly the influx of new characters. I don't know anything about Spider-Man. Like, that's what is, like, causing information overload for me. It's not the fact that they're reprinting Emrakul again.
Pro Tour Edge of Eternities was a couple weeks ago now, so we're just going to talk about it really quick. It's old news now, but we've talked about it. But, you know, Emma and I talked about it in the run-up, and of course we have constructive Magic expert Dan here to talk about it after the fact. Michael Dibonetto Plumber won on Tameshi Charbelcher. So funny to see Goblin Charbelcher in the year of our Lord 2025 win a Pro Tour, especially the Modern Pro Tour. And so much of this deck, so much of like Belcher being able to exist in Modern was just so important for Modern Horizons 3 to exist.
Tameshi's a really great angle on it too. There's just looking through the deck list, it is a mono blue except for the splash, the blue-black splash land that is like sort of like a mystical teachings or something. I think that can find one of your other combo pieces, but it's a really fun deck, and Tameshi is a really interesting angle to help push it over the edge with the Lotus Blooms.
Yeah, what exactly are they doing with Tameshi here?
So Tameshi, so it works in sort of, I guess, the same way as the Tameshi CDH deck. Tameshi has an activated ability for X and white. Return a land you control to its owner's hand. Return an artifact or enchantment card with value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you get to just keep recurring your Lotus Blooms as many times as you have lands, which basically you only need to do it. I guess you probably need to do it 3 or 4 times because you're netting 2 mana every time when you're paying 1 white for the Tameshi ability. But yeah, you need to accumulate 7 to then be able to activate Goblin Charbelcher.
Which is honestly so sick.
Yeah, it's really cool because like in the Legacy decks, we're looking at like you have Dark Rituals, Cabal Rituals, and all sorts of things like that to be able to get your mana much higher, but don't have access to really anything like that outside of this kind of more specific combo with Tameshi and Lotus Bloom and Modern.
And I guess too, like, I'm sure it doesn't happen all that often, but like, you play out a Goblin Charbelcher, counter it, gets countered or something, which I guess is why people play Force of Negation. But, if your Goblin Charbelcher gets countered or something, maybe you want to recur with Tameshi. Maybe that's something you can do. It's a cute.
It's definitely a side angle you have, yeah.
A side angle. But yes, so fun to see Charbelcher take down the event. I think, from an outsider's perspective, control decks, they were quite successful, and I think that was perhaps the surprise of the event to me. There was Jeskai list that did really well, including which had like Galvanic Discharge for removal and, Flage, both as like a Lightning Helix to remove and stabilize and then be beat down, obviously. But then also there was some Azorius lists, which were doing like crazy lockout stuff with Narset Parter Veils and Days Undoing, and then also playing Orum's Chant and Isochron Scepter to make it so your opponent can never cast a spell again.
Yeah, we're talking like some real hard locks.
Yes. And I think there was a Chant deck in the top 8, which is so sick.
In second place, Francisco Sanchez is playing 4 Orum's Chants in the main deck of Azorius Control. Which
how about Chant versus Charbelcher for a finals? How about that?
Well, the funny thing is that like the Tameshi one is all activated abilities. So like theoretically, if like Orum's Chant is like way better versus like the Legacy version where you do have to like chain a bunch of spells together. But looking at these decks, looking at Francisco's, I was like, this is the kind of deck that I would love to play. 4 Narset Parter Veils, 4 Teferi Time Ravelers. We got 2 Days Undoings to lock it up with the Narset. This is the kind of deck that I love. No hard win conditions, just grinding your opponent to a halt. But I am honestly surprised that it did so well. Like, I think I would personally be afraid to take it to this tournament with the other decks that were in the top places. But Francisco did a great job. Came in second. So very, very cool deck.
And as always, I think like a fun thing about the Pro Tour 2 is like, it's fun to look at the modern decks of the people in the top 8, but 6 of their rounds were from limited. Like, Tameshi Belcher, you see it win, you might think it did really well. Well, obviously Michael did well in the Swiss. He had to get to the top 8, but Tameshi Belcher as a whole over the weekend only had a 45% win rate. That's not super great. And speaking of factoids and speaking of win rates, my favorite thing to come out of this from the Metagame Mentor article from Frank Karsten, always great, always worth reading. I'll link it in the description. That's where I've pulled pretty much all this data. The second most winningest category of deck was the other pile, which for this was any deck that had 12 or less pilots. The other category as a whole posted a 45.3% win rate, which is abnormal. For example, it was a standard Pro Tour, but at Pro Tour Final Fantasy, which was the other category, was all standard decks with fewer than 3 pilots, which is way different than 12, but still the other category had a Swiss win rate of 39%. That is quite different than 54%. Which I think it's just like Modern just does feel so wide open right now. It's really cool.
It's honestly the first time I've taken a like good earnest look at Modern in a little while. But yeah, I love to see the diversity in the top 8. The rest of the deck list looked like a lot of fun. Was there anything particular in the other category, like any particular deck list that you really liked?
I didn't. Oh, yes. I did really like Matt Costa's Jeskai Blink deck, which had like Ephemerate, Consigned to Memory, but it was like Phalia, and it had Phalia in it, and it was just doing really cool stuff. We talked about it last week, but he did end up going 7-3 while being in the other category. There was a really sick Eldrazi Tron deck that we talked about last week, which we knew that Eldrazi Tron was going to be popular here, but there were 4 players who played Portent of Calamity. Are you familiar with that spell, Dan?
I think I'm only thinking of Portent. I don't know if I know of Calamity.
Allow me to read it to you. Portent of Calamity, X in a blue. It is a rare from Bloomburrow. Reveal the top X cards of your library. For each card type, you may exile a card of that type from among them. Put the rest into your graveyard. You may cast a spell from among the exiled cards without paying its mana cost if you exiled 4 or more cards this way.
Oh, wow.
So their entire plan was cast Portent of Calamity for X7. Mm-hmm. And they had done like the math crazy style for their deck list to make sure that they had a really high probability of casting something for free. And they played they had Eldritch Moon Emrakul in their deck. And, like that kind of, a lot of the crazy Tron stuff, it could just do a normal Tron game plan. But they also just had this almost feels like dig through time plus dig through time plus cast whatever you find for free type of thing in their deck. The 4 of them finished a collective 20 and 19 for a 51% win rate, which hey, cute and fun.
Honestly, the deck already seems to be pretty well set up to do that, because you've got all the creatures you would normally play, you got your expedition maps, etc. Kozilek's Command is an absolute powerhouse, and then obviously you've got your Karns and Ugins that you want to cast, so it feels like hitting 4 is almost no problem, and you get to dig that deep to try to get your Ugin Eye of Storms or something like that to just close out the game immediately. That's amazing. That's very cool.
And my favorite deck from the weekend, which 3 Japanese players brought to the tournament, including Shohei Nakamura, who was leading the standings on it after day 1. It was an Is It Affinity deck, which was a style of deck we also talked about last week, where they really try to lean really hard into maximizing Pinnacle Emissary, which is you can warp it in for 1 when you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 drone creature token with flying. They were playing a lot of that very similar shell, but they were also playing weapons manufacturing. If you're unfamiliar, you know what it is, Dan. But it's 1 in a red enchantment. Whenever a non-token artifact you control enters, create a colorless artifact token named Munitions with when this token leaves the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to any target. They would pair that with a little spell called Engineered Explosives.
Hell yeah.
Cast Engineered Explosives for 0, blow it up, deal 6 to your opponent off or 8, 10, 12 off of all your munitions that you blow up. Yeah,
I was gonna say, audience, if you haven't seen Makeshift Munitions deck really go off before, it is a sneakily very, very strong Magic card, because it does obviously present the problem of it gives you the munitions and then you have to do something to get rid of them. But you know what? I've heard of that card that you just said before. People play that in Modern a lot.
Engineered Explosives. Yeah, you might have heard that one, dude. And they had a sneaky grind plan with it as well. One of Claws of Gix.
Claws of Gix?
0 cost artifact. 1, sacrifice a permanent. You gain 1 life. Yeah, what was it in?
Your Time Spiral, maybe?
Yeah, it was on the time shifted sheet in Time Spiral, and therefore is modern legal.
Wow, sick.
So Claws of Gix, we're in a grindy matchup. Okay, sacrifice our munition, deal 2 damage to your creature, gain a life, do it again.
That's sick. That's really,
or to your
cool.
face or whatever. It's so silly. That was my favorite of the spicy decks. And those 3 players did finish a collective 18 and 12 for a 60% win rate, which, hey, hell yeah.
It's not a huge sample size, but those are good numbers. I like it.
Exactly. All right. We're running a little long on time already, and we still have the meat of what I want to talk about today. So I think that's all I have to say about Pro Tour Edge of Eternities. Dan, I know you didn't really get the chance to watch it. I know you watched Limited a little bit. Did anything about Edge of Eternities Limited pop out for you?
Honestly, I'm just a fan of Edge of Eternities Limited. I thought it was a fun limited environment. I really like Artifact limited environments. They tend to be creative and fun. And people drafted some really interesting decks. I forget the name of the player that they were watching on day 1. with Marshall Sutcliffe, I want to say, was doing the commentating, but they were noting while they were watching him, they're like, oh, like this person is drafting a deck archetype that doesn't really exist. They have sort of like created their own Dimir artifact like subtype of draft archetype doing this thing, which I just think speaks to how much fun that draft format is.
Anyways, we will not be seeing any more Age of Eternities Limited for a long time because there are always more Magic the Gathering sets coming down the pipeline. I guess we should probably talk about that. It's time for the Product Watch.
Product Watch!
The Product Watch is presented by Card Conduit, the best place to sell all of your Magic the Gathering cards that you don't want anymore. The process is simple. You go to their website, you choose one of their 3 different services, which are basically, you know, how much effort do you want to put in, and then how little fees will they charge you based on how much effort you put in. All of the cards you want to get rid of, send it to them. One package, they will get you the highest buy list available price out there. I have sold plenty of cards on there where whatever someone has on their buy list for a card is higher than whatever the lowest price on TCG Player is, which makes me a happy man. I've used Card Conduit 5, 6, 7 different times now, and every single time I've been a very happy customer. Join me in using Card Conduit and use code HORN at checkout to get 5% off your order, and let them know that we sent you. 2026 is rapidly approaching, and with it comes a galloping 7 new Magic the Gathering sets, all 7 of them standard legal. And perhaps even more interesting, more depressing, however you want to put it, 4 of them are Universes Beyond, and 3 of them are normal Magic the Gathering sets. Wizards of the Coast says it's a simple scheduling, not snafu, but they would probably call it a necessary evil, or, you know, something more business speak than that, because of whatever obligations they had to all their different business partners for these different products. Whatever. I don't care why, but there are 7 standard legal sets coming to Magic the Gathering next year. Back in my day, we had 4 in a master set during the summer.
That's what I kept thinking the whole time we were talking about the Masters thing, is that like, what a like a nice little treat it was to have one set during the summer when you're like, oh, that stretch between the spring and the fall set feels so long. I don't remember what that feels like anymore.
No, me either. So yeah, there's going to be 7 sets. We're going to run through them. We might have things to say about them. We might not, depending. I definitely have things to say about the first one, Lorwyn Eclipsed. That set was originally supposed to be coming out this year, I believe about the same time as Spider-Man. Actually, no, I believe about the same time as Avatar, and then it got bumped back. People were assuming it got bumped back because of Avatar. It definitely got bumped back because of Spider-Man becoming standard legal unexpectedly. But they showed off a lot of stuff about the set at Magic on Atlanta over the that weekend. Some of my favorite stuff: new double-faced cards to represent like the Lorwyn and Shadowmoor versions of characters. They're also like the first double-face cards that we as players are fully in control of the transformation of. In the past, you know, you might have been able to transform a card and then it stays on the other side of the card full time, or it'll transform when you have 7 lands, a la Nissa Vastwood Seer, or, you know, it's one of the many Night and Day cards or similar werewolf effects where if anyone casts 2 spells, it's going to flip, or if anyone casts no spells, it's going to flip. These ones at the beginning of your first main phase on each of your turns, you can pay a tiny bit of mana, and if you do, it'll flip to the other side. Pretty slick. I like double face cards. They showed off some mythic evoke elementals, where the evokes are double hybrid costs, but then what the enter the battlefield ability that you get before the creature is sacrificed is, or not sacrificed, is based on what mana was spent to cast it. And then you're going to get both enter the battlefield's abilities if you cast the card for its whole mana value, assumedly, if you're smart about it. And honestly, I'm just happy we're going back to Lorwyn. Lorwyn and Shadowmoor are 2 really cool, really thematic sets that sneakily have had such a wide-ranging influence and effect on the history of Magic, even though they were just confined to, I think there were 4 total sets on the plane before now. Lots of really cool, like, staples all over Magic out of that set. Lots of flavor from that set. Lots of, like, the kindred stuff mattering that we think of so casually now. A lot of it had some of its early home and stuff in that early stuff in that Llanowar, in the Llanowar block. Holy moly! The trains are coming off the bus.
Yeah,
The wheels are coming off the bus.
We're really getting back there when we're talking about this stuff, because this is obviously even pre-EDH, or for the most part pre-EDH. And yeah, really lays the groundwork for a lot of things that will become much bigger ideas in Magic over the next 10 or 15 years.
And so it's cool to go back, fun to have a standard legal set. The cards they showed off have looked like fine, but again, they're standard legal stuff. I just love the aesthetics of the plane. I think that's
all I really care about personally.
Have you seen any of the new art?
Yes, the Evoke Elementals look fantastic. Just the promo art that they were showing off at wherever they first announced the release date and everything. They just had I think a couple shots that were like landscape paintings that they were doing for lands, I would assume, that were just absolutely gorgeous. And in terms of modern sets, Lorwyn Block is one of my favorite of all time, strictly for the deep fantasy settings. The art style is so fantastic. I think it really hits the nail on the head of everything that in my mind personally, that's Lorwyn is everything that Magic should be.
We're moving on from Lorwyn Eclipsed, which unfortunately, at least from my perspective, looks like it will be the highlight of the year. Onto an unannounced Universes Beyond set. That is right. At their own major event of the year, Wizards of the Coast did not even want to announce one of their own sets, because it is instead going to be announced at New York City Comic Con very soon after the release of this pod. Tuesday, it is the 7th, 8th, 9th, I believe on Friday the 10th is when it is going to be announced. So the day after this episode comes out. There is a known TM panel there between Nickelodeon and Wizards of the Coast, and so speculation is really just popping off about which Nickelodeon property it is going to be for this set. Are we going to have a whole SpongeBob set? Probably not. I think the people's leadings guess is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was just a major set for, I believe, the Universes card game. So that would be a little bit weird if that came around to that quickly, but hey, what do I know? Nothing. So I am interested to see where this goes, and I also don't care at the same time.
The fact that it's going to be a standard legal Nickelodeon set is pretty off the wall, but I have to say that I fully also do not care. I guess I'm going to put my vote in the ring for Invader Zim. Yeah, not to pick a fight, but Cartoon Network, I think, has a substantially stronger library of cartoons to pick from for this sort of a thing, especially for a standard set. If we're talking a Secret Lair, yeah, sure, I don't know, not to diss the Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles are cool, but I don't know. There are other things I would much rather see a fully standard legal set of cartoon Magic cards about.
And if we're talking about things I would like to see in a fully standard Magic the Gathering set, we can at least have a bit of a treat as we go back to Strixhaven for Secrets of Strixhaven. Another set they didn't really talk much about, except that it's going to have, I think we're going to be escaping the campus a little bit. The original Strixhaven set was really hey, here's all these schools. Some cool reinterpretations of 2-color pairs, what they do, what they care about. But now it seems we're going to be following some students out into the quote-unquote real world or what have you, or perhaps out into the greater plane to try to solve some great mystery, I'm sure. But most importantly, or perhaps most interestingly, there is going to be a new Magic the Gathering young adult novel set on Strixhaven coming out at about the same time by fan favorite Shannon McGuire. I think that was kind of the biggest news to come out at that time from that panel, at least about Strixhaven. Were you a fan of Strixhaven, Dan? I know that was kind of in your falling off Magic the Gathering era for sure. So it really get you at all, or?
It's far from my favorite. I I think that they sort of pigeonholed themselves in the first set, like with what you're talking about, like really trying to strongly establish the settings, and especially because they're also like trying to push like, maybe we don't call it Golgari anymore, and now it's whatever the hell, Witherbloom, etc. So I think that, yeah, maybe they have like kind of strongly put themselves in that box for that initial set. So I think I'm much more excited to see a return to Strixhaven in a sort of wider world, because I think that it has a lot to offer. Certainly, I mean, we got Magecraft from that set, which is not quite Storm, but it's certainly not Storm either. So yeah, seeing more very powerful cards that care about casting and instant sorceries and maybe even copying them would be cool.
Definitely heavily agree. It'd be fun to see. I want to see like another round of the I want to see another round of like the cool bonus sheet. I like the Strixhaven like bonus sheet spell stuff that they did. I think it would be fun to see another round of that, just because it does cool stuff. They put cool spells on there. Obviously, none of it was standard legal. They have a very similar thing going on these days with the special guests, which could kind of be an analog. And obviously, especially the Japanese versions of those have stayed very popular for a very long time.
Yeah. And they do become, what is the arena format for all of our digital
Brawl,
gamers?
Eternal Brawl as well.
I'm thinking of like the modern on Arena, whatever they call that. I can't remember.
Oh man,
not Alchemy.
I also don't remember.
Yeah,
Alchemy sounds roughly correct to me.
Alchemy is the one that with the weird alchemy cards. So there's one that's like when they introduce stuff via those bonus sheets, it becomes legal in whatever that Arena modern format is.
Yes, definitely. So moving on from Secrets of Strixhaven. Marvel's Superheroes. They showed off a lot of art for this one as well. It's looking like everyone's in this one, all the way from like the galactic threats like Thanos, all the way down to your street heroes like Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, etc. They showed off a bunch of baddies. They showed off the Avengers. They showed off the Fantastic Four. Nick Cage, maybe the most interesting thing they shared was that it's definitely like comic book Marvel aimed rather than like MCU aimed, which like cool, whatever. It made me marginally more excited about it, but especially after how hard Spider-Man flopped my expectations, when like the Spider-Man universe of the Marvel stuff is probably what I care about the most. I'm not that hype about it.
Yeah, I mostly agree. I guess I'm glad that there's going to be a lot more heroes to enjoy, because like one of the worst parts about Spider-Man is there's like 40 different cards with the name Spider-Man like in the title of it. So yeah, I don't know. Guess seeing more characters will be a breath of fresh air, but I don't know. I likewise don't have very high hopes for another Marvel set. I am not a Marvel person in general. And I don't know. I mean, not to bash too much on the MCU, but like it really is like not great cinema. So to turn some not great cinema into my favorite game sounds unenticing.
Hey, well, what about some decent cinema? Well, actually, some bad cinema being turned into some more of your favorite card game. We've got Magic the Gathering, The Hobbit up next. Of all of the Universes Beyond properties, I've said this before, of all the Universes Beyond properties, Lord of the Rings is far and away like the least aesthetically offensive to me, because it is, it's the high fantasy, right?
Yeah. It's very easy to forget that Lord of the Rings cards are like not within the Magic universe.
Yeah, it's because Lord of the Rings is, like 80% of the bedrock that Magic the Gathering's original flavor was built upon, right? And so, The Hobbit, the movie's not great. The book, reread that like 2 years ago. Joyous.
Mm-hmm. It's fun.
So, I mean, hey, I'm not really sure how they're going to make a whole, much like I'm not sure how they managed to squeeze 3 whole movies out of a short
I was going to say, they might have some really good inspiration on how to squeeze too much content out of The Hobbit.
I'm not really sure how they're going to squeeze a whole Magic set out of it. But I mean, there's a lot, much how they did for kind of the first time around. There's a lot of generic Lord of the Rings flavor that I'm sure could make it into Magic card sets. And then, of course, I'm sure we'll have Frodo at this stage as his journey as an uncommon, and Frodo at this stage of his journey as a rare, and Frodo at this stage of his journey as a mythic. Those kind of like vertical cycles again. And I'm sure we'll get all the different dwarves, and there's stuff to be played with there. They'll even Thumberchod as Smaug, and
even if we are like focusing on the story of the Hobbit, like the wider Lord of the Rings universe takes place over thousands and thousands of years. There's so much cool lore to be able to go and explore that I don't think would
there's like stuff to work with.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it would necessarily be like so offensive to be like focusing on the Hobbit as our set, but we're looking at like the creation myths of Middle Earth and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of really interesting meat on the bones of Lord of the Rings lore to explore.
And then coming off of that is going to be the final in-universe set of the year. It is Reality Fracture, which they said is going to be doing some stuff that Magic fans have asked for a really long time. It's going to be doing some stuff that they said they didn't even think was possible in Magic the Gathering or something akin to that. Speculation from people is very quickly going down the shattered timelines, alternate realities for people. We saw a really sick piece of art of like Chandra, all like the major elements of her life, like her with her mom, her at the outside of Carol Keep, her on Avishkar, a much more grown up version of her, kind of like all in a big panorama. Which was very cool. Maybe we're going to see the past of some characters changed, all that kind of stuff. And there was some big thing about, you'll be shocked when it's revealed who the villain was all along. It's Jace. Jace is the bad guy. You don't have to tell me that. Jace is the bad guy. And it is officially an event set a la War of the Spark or March of the Machine, where this is like, we've been in the Omen Paths arc of the story for some time now, pretty much ever since Wilds of Eldraine, and Reality Fracture is officially like the closing of that book, and then we'll be on to the next major storyline beat. I gotta say, overall, I've kind of liked the Omen Path story. It's had some like stinkers or some stuff that didn't really matter as much, like Outlaws, albeit important because it introduced Loot, which in the context of the story, Loot is very important because he has a map of the entire multiverse in his head. That's why Loot matters. That was kind of whatever, and Murders was kind of whatever. But like the actual factual story of like Aether Drift and then some of the other stuff we've seen, like Edge of Eternity, Tarkir Dragonstorm, it's all been really solid. And I am relatively invested and interested in seeing how they close it up. But I also could understand if a lot of people aren't super interested, especially when the last two event sets we had are probably some of the more divisive sets in the last decade of Magic.
Yeah. I don't know. I as a person who doesn't really pay attention much to the lore story of Magic, I guess I'm pretty glad to be done with the Omen Pass. It just seems like we have been on this beat for a really long time. I don't necessarily like all of the places that it has taken us to. And I'm kind of hoping that with the feedback that they've gotten over this past year of like Universes Beyond versus in-universe Magic, like I know these sets that we're going to be talking about in the next story have probably already been in production for a year or two, but I'm hoping that we maybe see a harder lean towards a more traditional Magic stuff with the next story arc.
Me as well. I'm still really interested to see if they take the opportunity to be on a plane for more than one set at a time. I think that's like something they always said was possible for them to do ever since the death of Blocks. And I cannot think of something off the top of my head where they have in fact decided to do that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see that. Like, I guess like if we're going to talk about like the sets that I really don't like, the Outlaws, Thunder Junction of the world, I'm very glad that we're spending a singular set on those sorts of things. But when we do get to things that are really cool that spark the minds and imagination of Magic players, like Edge of Eternities, like it is really a shame that we are not getting to spend a little bit more time in these very cool worlds.
Heavily agree. Speaking of cool worlds to visit, we have our final set of the year, Magic the Gathering Star Trek. I don't care.
Have you ever seen any Star Trek before?
I have passively seen some episodes of The Next Generation when like my townhouse in college was watching through it obsessively. I'm sure obviously a lot of people like it. I'm sure this will be a positive reception of Universes Beyond. You know, as far as Universes Beyond sets go, I think like, you know, the sci-fi thing is kind of right there. We were kind of already experimenting with it in Edge of Eternities. I'm sure we will see some of the like station, the mechanic. I'm sure we will see a return to in Star Trek. I'm just down on Universes Beyond in general, obviously, and Star Trek has just never been a... Are you a Star Trek guy, Dan?
No, I have seen a single episode, the one where Data goes on trial, and I think that's The Next Generation. Great episode, cool writing, it's a cool show. I appreciate it for like what it is overall. I think that it's like, in terms of all of the wider Universes Beyond universe, on the scale of Dwight Schrute to Lord of the Rings, I think that Star Trek is a lot closer to Lord of the Rings for me personally, in terms of like, this seems like a fairly adjacent magic universe to exist in. There's a lot to bite off and chew on, and there are lots of worlds to explore, lots of monsters to see, etc. Things that don't necessarily have to just be
lots of
John
iconic
Le Picard's face on a magic card.
Yeah, yes.
So yeah, I think as a person who's not a Star Trek fan, this is, I guess, one of the more interesting Universes Beyonds to me conceptually. I'm not exactly excited about it, but
it's at least a little interesting to you.
I think it certainly has potential, I guess, is where I'm landing on it.
Yep. I think that perfectly makes sense. Man, I do not care.
Oh yeah.
I do not care. Maybe I will be able to care as, you know, we get into it a little bit and we start to see the cards. And, you know, I will say, like, the Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering set ended up making me more interested in Final Fantasy. So maybe the Star Trek set will come out, and I'll, as an invested player, I will look at it and I will write about it and I will think about it and I'll complain about it online or I'll love it online, whatever, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, like, the Lord of the Rings, like, changed my life. I was not a Lord of the Rings fan before that, and now I'm a, like, Lord of the Rings super fan. So I have seen the transformative potential of a very cool Universes Beyond set for myself, so I believe that there are more possible. It is, I guess, a bit dubious that I would be so invested in, like, to say that I really care about a Star Trek standard set, but who knows?
Yep. So we will only be able to wait and see. I think the main takeaway for me, whatever the sets are going to be, 7 sets in a year is crazy. 7 standard sets is nuts, especially because now rotation is not locked to the amount of sets. It is locked to years.
Yeah, the card pool is going to get so huge. Wild. Yeah.
Maybe some of these sets will be smaller. I don't know. Maybe, you know, they got lost in the sauce with Marvel's Spider-Man. I saw they're making pick 2 draft night products for every single set next year. So maybe like something like The Hobbit will be a sneakily smaller set, or maybe the unannounced set will be a little bit smaller. And so there is just, like, as a result, 60 less cards, you know, entering standard from there than there could have been otherwise. But
I mean, even if we're putting, like, very conservatively 150 cards would be, like, an extremely small set. To put, like, 150 cards per set into standard for all 7 of those, that's still a huge number of cards to introduce a standard in 1 calendar year.
Yep. Heavily agree. And I'm also pissed off that 4 of the 7 are Universes Beyond. It is what it is. That's business, baby, but I don't have to be happy about it. And I think that's all that we have for this episode. So before we go, Dan, is there anything else that you want to leave the listeners with?
No, thanks for listening. If you want to support us, hit up the Patreon. That is always very much appreciated. If you want to support the other stuff that I work on, go subscribe to the Scry Babies on YouTube, as well as the Howling Salt Mine podcast. You can find them anywhere podcasts are sold.
Wait, I love the Howling Salt Mine podcast and the Scry Babies.
I work on both of them. I'm the reason why you love them so much. It's not
true.
The host.
It is true. It is true. All right, everyone. We will see you again in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.